Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper, and today we'll be continuing our wizard rankings. We're going to be talking about the middle of the pack. As I mentioned in the previous video, I think the wizard is the strongest class in the game. These rankings take that into consideration, so keep in mind that even the subclass that I rank as the lowest or weakest wizard subclass is still going to be slightly above average when compared to other subclasses for the other classes in the game. Today, we're going to be discussing the mid-tier wizard subclasses. These subclasses are all great options and can usually be built to be top tier if you build them carefully and you plan ahead. I've based my rankings on a combination of mechanics, which have the highest weight, lore, and synergy with the chosen school. I've also given a pretty good amount of weight to the level 2 ability, since that ability is the one that you're going to use the most throughout your adventuring career. I've given a lower weight to the level 14 abilities, since most campaigns don't ever reach level 14, and you may never see that ability. If a subclass has a particularly powerful or particularly weak ability, that also plays into the ranking as well. So today we're going to be starting with number 8, and that would be Necromancy. Necromancy is a school that deals with life energy of living things and the powers of undeath, and it's another one that I wish was a bit more interesting. I do think that the subclass has the most potential in terms of changing its place on my ranking list. This is because the second level feature, Grim Harvest, gets better as more spells are added to the wizard spell list. Every time you kill a creature with a spell of first level or higher, you regain hit points equal to twice the spell's level or 3 times the spell's level if it was a necromancy spell. Currently, there aren't too many spells in the school of necromancy that can be effective at killing things, but more spells are always being added as new products come out, so this feature is going to get much better with every new release. At level 6, you get the Animate Dead spell for free, and the spell is more powerful when you cast it than other wizards. The undead that you create with it have more hit points, and they add your proficiency bonus to hit and damage. You can also make more undead than other wizards can with one casting of the spell. And if you've never played at a table with a 6th level necromancer, you're really missing out. Having an undead entourage is really cool and adds a lot of damage output to the party. Plus, you can have them defend you against other attackers by blocking them from getting to you, and the tactical advantages of having undead thralls is honestly pretty tremendous. The best part is that, unlike most conjuration summoning spells, the Animate Dead spell doesn't require concentration, so you can control your undead thralls and still concentrate on another spell that requires concentration and be more effective in battle. Or you can even summon more combat effective pets in addition to your undead thralls. That's another option. At 10th level, you get the Inured to Undeath feature. You get resistance to necrotic damage, and you can't have your hit point maximum reduced. Resistance is always good. At this level, I think at least necrotic damage is far more common than in lower levels, so it's nice that you get it now instead of at a lower level where it would have been a little bit less useful. It's still a rather mediocre ability though. And then at 14th level, your capstone is called Command Undead. This one is pretty interesting. You can use this as many times as you want, and it doesn't require concentration. So you can take control of an undead, and if it's killed, you can control another one. It doesn't work as well on intelligent undead, because they get a saving throw against your spell save DC, and they're probably going to make that save, but there's still a chance that you succeed, and you can potentially control a vampire or mummy lord. So I really like the ability, and I think it's pretty well balanced for its level. It's not the strongest, but it's pretty cool. Number 7 on my list is Evocation. Evocation is the school you choose if you want to blow stuff up. The wizard is not exactly the class I'd pick if I wanted to be dealing tons of damage, but if that's your jam and you want to play a wizard, then this is the subclass that you're going to want to pick. At level 2, you get the Sculpt Spells feature. This one allows you to blast into a crowd and keep your allies relatively safe. This ability is honestly really good, especially because it addresses a problem that's found with a lot of blast and AoE spells. Your frontline fighters like to run up to enemies, and if they're in the middle of combat, it can be kind of tricky to effectively blast enemies without hurting your allies. The Sculpt spell feature allows you to blast without having to worry about that, and it makes you far more effective at damaging multiple enemies in one action. Now, there is a kind of a thing going on online about the Sculpt spell feature and whether you can sculpt spells around yourself, because it says like other creatures. It doesn't matter. Even if you can't do that, it's still a really good ability and really helpful for the rest of the group. At level 6, you get the Potent Cantrip feature. Basically, this one allows you to cast saving throw cantrips and still deal half damage, even if the enemy succeeds on their saving throw. Although it's kind of nice on paper, I think it's not as useful as it sounds, to be honest. Most saving throw cantrips cause secondary effects, which is generally why you're casting them. Dealing half damage on a successful save without dealing the secondary effect is pretty lackluster still. So using an action to just do half damage on a cantrip, it's kind of a waste of an action. I mean, I guess it's better than dealing 0, but so let me give you an example. Say you cast Lightning Lure. This spell is a control spell, and it allows you to move a creature, and it does a little bit of damage in addition to the movement. A successful save negates everything, and with this ability, you get to do half damage with it. But the real reason you casted the spell was to move the person or the creature, not for the damage. So the extra damage that you're dealing by them succeeding doesn't fix the shortcomings of not being able to succeed in casting this spell. I've said in other videos that there's very few saving throw cantrips that I actually like. Generally, if you want to be dealing damage, you want to cast an attack roll cantrip because you have a chance to nail a critical hit. You can get advantage on an attack roll by using tactics. Magic resistance doesn't affect an attack roll cantrip. Whereas saving throw cantrips, they don't have any of those options to increase their damage or critical hits or things like that, or to increase the chance of hitting. And magic resistance affects saving throw cantrips. So this makes them automatically worse options than attack roll cantrips. It's why saving throw cantrips tend to have more secondary effects than attack roll ones. And it's why you would want to pick one over an attack roll cantrip if you have the choice between the two. This ability doesn't really improve those saving throw cantrips, so in my opinion, it's a pretty bad ability. At 10th level, you gain the Empowered Evocation. This is pretty straightforward. It allows you to add your intelligence modifier to the damage roll of any wizard evocation spell. Pretty straightforward in its design. A little extra damage is nice, but it's not going to be significant enough to make a huge difference. I'm going to say, though, it does scale much better if you're casting it against more foes. For example, Fireball that deals 23 damage each to a group of 10 orcs can now instead deal 28 damage each to the orcs. That means that you've just dealt an extra 50 points of damage because of this ability. So in that sense, if you're attacking multiple foes, then I would say this ability does actually scale pretty well. So it can be pretty significant if you happen to cast like AoE evocation against larger groups, but most of the time you're going to pretty much be adding an extra 4 or 5 points of damage, which is pretty lackluster, to be honest. Finally, the capstone at 14th level, you get the Over Channel feature. Now finally, the evoker gets a fantastic way to go supernova. So dealing maximum damage on an evocation of 5th level or lower is so powerful. Even though you can use this more than once per long rest, there's kind of a built-in safety net in order to keep it from breaking the game. So I do like that they did that. I'm okay with this feature having that limitation. It allows you to make a decision if you've already used this ability and really need to use it again. Now you're kind of conflicted, and if it's really worth it, you're going to do it, so it kind of puts that decision making into your mind. Overall, I think the Evocation Wizard is pretty middle of the pack in terms of power level for the wizard subclasses. The second level ability is very good, but the rest are pretty lackluster until you get to level 14. And since most of the abilities have to do with just dealing damage, this subclass can feel kind of boring when compared to some others. Number 6 on my list is the War Wizard. The War Wizard is somewhat misunderstood, and I think it's because of the name. The War Wizard is not really a combat-based wizard. Instead, it's best at battlefield control and being a sort of a generalist wizard. Their abilities in early levels are very defense-based, and it handles them in a different way than Abjuration does. Later on, you get a bit of offense, but that serves best to round out the subclass than to become a primary offensive caster. At level 2, you get Tactical Wit. This one gets you a bonus 2 initiative equal to your intelligence modifier. Initiative bonuses are always great, and getting to go early means that your control spells are going to go off as intended because your fellow party members aren't going to be in the way of, say, a web or grease or another area of effect control spell. It's also great for positioning yourself on the battlefield and away from danger. The ability stacks with the alert feat, so you can realistically have double-digit initiative bonus if you wanted to do that. In addition, at level 2, you also get the Arcane Deflection ability. This one allows you to use your reaction to gain a +2 to AC against an attack or a +4 to a saving throw. You can use this ability as many times as you want, which is awesome. The only drawback is that you can't cast spells other than cantrips until the end of your next turn after you use this ability. So the way I see it is the +2 to AC is nothing game breaking. In fact, I'd probably never use it for the +2 to AC. Shield grants you a +5 bonus, and it doesn't have the restriction of not being able to cast a spell the next round. And Shield also applies for the entire round instead of just one attack like this ability does. Now, the +4 to the saving throw, that one's extremely useful because this bonus can easily turn the tide of battle if it allows you to keep your concentration on a control spell or something. The drawback is not as bad as you may think. If you're playing a War Wizard as a battlefield controller, you're probably concentrating on a major control spell when you use this ability. So it's not like you're going to be useless. In fact, the spell you're concentrating on is probably turning the battle in your favor. So using this ability to keep that spell up is actually more impactful than being able to cast a spell on the next round. And also, there's plenty of excellent wizard cantrips that you can cast while you concentrate, like Minor Illusion or Toll the Dead or, Gust or many others. So the good news is that after your turn, you can cast spells. So that means that spells like Absorb Elements and Shield are still options for you because they're reaction spells and they're not cast during your turn usually. At level 6, you get the Power Surge ability. You can store a number of Power Surges equal to your intelligence modifier, and basically, whenever you counter a spell or dispel magic, you gain another Power Surge. After a long rest, the Power Surges go back to 1, whether you were at 0 or 5 before the rest. You can use your Power Surges to deal force damage to a target of a damaging spell you cast. The damage can only be used once per turn, and it equals half your wizard level. So unfortunately, this is a pretty lackluster ability, and it's a big part of why the War Wizard it's not higher on the list for me. Dealing half your wizard level in damage, it's not going to be a big impact on many combats at all, but at least it's force damage, which is not resisted very often. What I really don't like about this ability is that it's kind of complex to track, like all these points and all this stuff and reset them. And it has very little payoff for all the tracking and complexity. So now you have to remember, track whenever you counter a spell or whenever you dispel magic. Remember to reset it when you take a rest. And all that so you can remember that when you cast a damaging spell, you get to deal 3 extra damage at level 6. Come on. They could have made it a little bit easier to do that. It's just so disappointing. Anyway, the level 10 ability is way better. This one is simple, but it's powerful. Whenever you're concentrating on a spell, which should be almost always, you get a +2 bonus to AC and all your saving throws. How awesome is that? So that is fantastically good. It's always on as long as you're concentrating without the need for using an action or reaction. So that's great. It also stacks with your Arcane Deflection, so you can give yourself an additional +2 to AC or a +4 to a saving throw by using your reaction. So yeah, this one's really good. Finally, at level 14, you get the Deflecting Shroud feature. Whenever you use your Arcane Deflection feature, you can deal force damage equal to half your wizard level up to 3 creatures within 6 feet of you. At this level, that means you're dealing a total of 21 damage, which is not terrible. The thing is that, to be honest, at this level, that's not a tremendous amount, especially since you're giving up casting spells on your next turn when you use the ability. It'd be cool if you could combine this with a Power Surge somehow. At least Power Surge does work with damaging cantrips, so you can add additional force damage that way the following round if you wanted to. Compared to some other wizards, this one is pretty lackluster for a capstone. It would be the worst one if Transmutation and Blade Singer weren't worse. So the way I see it, at least the level 14 ability is one that you're not going to see very often because you're probably not playing up to level 14. So it keeps the War Wizard from being dragged to the bottom tier. The War Wizard is propped up by the amazing 2nd level and 10th level abilities, and it's honestly a wizard subclass that sits square in the middle of the pack for subclasses. And it's fitting because the War Wizard is quite possibly the best option if you're trying to build a generalist. So it works out that it's right in the middle in terms of power level. And number 5 on my list is Illusion. The power level for Illusion really depends on your Dungeon Master and their interpretation of what's possible with illusions, but illusion spells as written are pretty much limited only by your imagination. At 2nd level, you get Improved Minor Illusion. This one's a neat ability. It grants you the Minor Illusion cantrip for free if you don't already own it, and a free cantrip if you already know the Minor Illusion cantrip. So basically, when you cast the Minor Illusion cantrip, you can now cast an improved version where you can make a sound and an image at the same time when you cast it. So this makes the already awesome Minor Illusion cantrip even better. In fact, I think Minor Illusion was probably the best cantrip in the game, especially since it doesn't require concentration. With this ability, the spell becomes even more useful in a number of ways, limited only by your imagination. There are a ton of uses, and it would take an entire video just to go over all of them, so I'll just end it there. At level 6, you get the Malleable Illusions ability. This one basically lets you change the nature of any illusion spell you cast that has a duration of 1 minute or more. This makes illusion spells even more powerful than they already are, which is pretty good. But the description of this ability is kind of vague. It says that changing the nature, it's something that I can see being a point of disagreement between some players and their dungeon masters. Regardless of how you interpret it, adding flexibility to an illusion is never a bad thing. So this ability does just that. At level 10, you get a bit of a defensive ability with Illusory Self. Once per short rest, you can cause an attack to automatically miss. This one's pretty nice and can save you in a pinch. I do wish it allowed you to use it on others and not just yourself, but it's still useful as it's written. I don't think this ability is appropriately powerful for the level that you get it at, though. There are others like, say, the Abjuration Wizard and the Enchantment Wizard, whose 10th level abilities run circles around this one. So I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a bit disappointing. Illusion can be really, really strong already, especially for battlefield control. So I kind of get why they didn't give them an ability that was too strong for 10th level. And their capstone, at 14th level, you get Illusory Reality. This is one of those abilities that I think can be so powerful that it can change the nature of your entire games moving forward. When you cast an illusion of 1st level or higher, you can make an inanimate object from that illusion into a real item. It can't harm anyone or deal damage, but even with that limitation, this spell has so many countless uses. As a matter of fact, I think this is probably the strongest capstone of all the wizard subclasses that are currently available. It's also the most fun, at least for me. It's mostly because it's powerful and it takes a lot of creative thinking to make it powerful. So I really like that challenge, you know. Overall, the School of Illusion is a fantastic wizard subclass. Their abilities are the most flexible and open-ended of any class in the game. The only reason I haven't selected the Illusion Wizard as the strongest of all the wizard subclasses is because Dungeon Master interpretation of these abilities and their spells can lead to some major nerfing of them. It can also be weak in the hands of a person with limited creativity. Unlike Divination or Abjuration, which are pretty foolproof regardless, the Illusion Wizard has to have the ability to think on their feet in order to maximize the power of the subclass. In the right hands, though, the Illusion Wizard would have been number 2 on my list. So there you go for that. Anyways, that does it for today's video on the middle tier for the wizard subclasses. I do hope this video was helpful, and if it was, please consider clicking the like button because that tells me that you want me to make more videos like it. As always, if you have any comments, leave them down there in the comments below. This is your Innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then. Number 6 on my list is the War Wizard. The War Wizard is sometimes misunderstood. I guess it's because of the name, War Wizard. Number 6 on my list is the War Wizard. Number 6 on my list is the War Wizard. Number 6 on my list is the War Wizard.